Welcome to TriStories, swim, bike, run, share, where we share the amazing stories of athletes just like you who love triathlon. It's raw and it's real. We want everyone to see why triathlon is the best sport in the world and the most amazing community and support. Reach out to us in the comments or via email in the details below if you have a story to share. Now let's enjoy this amazing triathlon story. So today we're here with Sloane, and do you want to just tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you for having me also. I'm excited to be on. I am 23. I'm a health and fitness coach. And basically, long story short, let's just talk about the last year. I got into triathlons in February last year in preparation for Bustleton, which was in December 2024. So that's been my past year. It's been definitely a bit of a change of training, but I've loved it. And yeah, it's brought a lot of new opportunities. So that's my last year, and that's me in a nutshell.
So your life outside of triathlon is coaching?
Yeah.
And just like personal coaching or?
Yeah, so like personal training, I'm a sports nutritionist as well. So it's all online, which is pretty cool. So yeah, I've got my own business, and that also works really well alongside my training because I do get to eat up my hours, which I'm super grateful for. So yeah, it all works out well.
I can relate to that. People often ask me, how do I fit it all in? And I say, well, I've got my own business and I work whenever I need to work.
Definitely. It's a huge perk.
Yeah. Not that I couldn't have done it without that, but it certainly gives you a lot more flexibility that you wouldn't normally have.
Absolutely.
And have you always worked for yourself, or you've done this as a new thing? Or?
So when I first graduated school, I went straight into personal training, which was face-to-face in a gym, just local to my area. I then worked as a manager there and then moved online, but it wasn't for myself at that time. So I stepped away from my own personal training and moved to work under another online coach for a couple of years, which was great. So I gained like a lot of experience with just business and the online world in general. And then I went off on my own and did my own online business. So yeah.
Yeah. And so tell us about how you got into triathlon. Why was, because I couldn't really pick that up from your YouTube story. Like, how did you go from a gym junkie to let's do a triathlon?
Yeah, it was super random. So I basically saw, which we just talked about, but I saw a girl, her Instagram's Nutty Foodie Fitness. I saw she did an Ironman, and I used to follow her and just like watch her YouTube for a while. And I watched her video when she did it. I think that was October 2023. And I was like, wow, that's amazing. And at that time, I was just like a bit sick of pure gym training for aesthetics. You know, like I'd been in the gym doing that type of thing for like 7 years at that point. So I was just like wanting a bit of a change. I'm up for a good challenge. Before, obviously, triathlon, I was into like bikini comps, bikini bodybuilding. And that didn't really fulfill me. Like I definitely kind of like got into that because I thought it was a good thing to do for my business, which absolutely I learned a lot. But moving away from that, I was like, keen for another challenge. And I saw that video, and it just like, as soon as I watched it, I was like, yeah, I'm gonna do an Ironman. And at that point, that was, I believe, October 2023. And I had never run before, ever, never cycled. And the last time I swam was with surf life saving when I was like around 12 years old. Like I did surf life saving growing up. So I had the swimming behind me from the past. But basically I sat on it for a couple of months. And then, yeah, in February last year, I was like, nah, I'm going to do it. I'm up for a challenge, and got a coach and just literally went straight on into it.
That's fantastic. I love that. It's funny because I've had people say that about seeing me do that on YouTube, but
Yeah.
I remember watching that particular YouTube channel, Nutty Foodie Goodness,
Yeah.
and yeah, there's a lot of similarities between the two of you. Let's put it that way, in the best kind of ways.
Yeah.
Big personalities, really honest, like the whole thing. And so. Yeah, so it's just such a strange jump from your background, but was there any particular reason why you chose, where was your first triathlon? That was...
The first ever triathlon I did was in Mackay. That was an Olympic distance, and that was 12 weeks before Bustleton Ironman.
So So you didn't have a lot of prep. You've done a lot of training, but not a lot of like on the job kind of stuff.
Yeah, no, not at all. So yeah, basically when I got my first coach in February, I picked Busselton because I thought realistically that's 10 months and that was like the latest one in the year. So I thought, yeah, cool, I'll do Busselton. But my plan was to just like make that Ironman my first ever triathlon. But then like I got obviously a couple months in, I was like, maybe I should just do an Olympic distance because there's a lot to triathlon, as you would know, like it's, you know, quite in depth and the transitions and stuff. So yeah, my first triathlon was in Mackay and then went over to Busselton and did the Ironman.
I think just from a nerves point of view, it's good to get one out of the way because it's like a lot of things. It's all the things you don't know that scare you. It's not, once you've done them, it's not so scary, but mind you, an Ironman's a little different from a normal Olympic distance, but at least you get to go through the motions.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think that's more important than people realize. I was thinking of doing the same thing originally, just going straight through to the, and luckily Fergus talked me out of that and said, no, you need to do some practice stuff in between, which is good. And so tell us about that first experience for you. Was it like obviously it was very different from everything you've done before.
Yeah, that first triathlon.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was super nervous. Like, I reckon I was way more nervous for that than the Ironman, in all honesty, because I went there by myself at the time. I was living in Airlie Beach. It was just like an hour drive. So I thought, yeah, I'll go up and do it. Like, it should be fine. And the whole drive, I was like extremely nervous. I was like, this is a weird amount of nerves for just like a little triathlon. I'm about to do an Ironman in 12 weeks time. But as soon as I was in the water, I was totally fine. Like, it was just the nerves beforehand and me even like not knowing how, like, where to put my stuff and like how to set up my transition.
Yeah.
I was definitely a fish out of water, but it went really well. Like nothing really went wrong. It was great. I loved it. And it's funny because I feel like when I came out of the swim and did the bike, that was like, it was hard. Like, I haven't actually told anyone this, but I was like, my legs were like fatigued. My body was fatigued at that point. I was like, this is so weird. It was a weird experience and it was nothing like that in the Ironman. So I'm really glad I did that. Yeah, it was strange, but
adrenaline maybe.
I think maybe adrenaline, yeah. But I pulled through. Obviously, it was a good outcome, but I'm really glad I did it.
Yeah, adrenaline can have a funny effect on your body in terms of like that nervousness that we don't really think about it, but it's really weird that you can be so wrecked from not really. I mean, the swim's not a big swim in an Olympic distance, but but your body does recover from that. So obviously you did and went on and you placed, where did you come in the first one that you did?
I was first in my age group.
Yeah. Yeah. So you set the bar pretty high for yourself moving forward from there. And so you said that you did surf lifesaving as a teenager or younger, or how old were you when?
So I started surf lifesaving around 5 years old. And I did it, I kind of forget when I stopped. It was around like 13, I reckon.
Okay, so it's still been a fair while since you'd...
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, and you'd never... have you done other sports other than the gym?
Rugby sevens and touch footy and stuff like that growing up, which I loved.
Yeah.
But when I got to like the later years of high school, I was just like purely gym. So yeah.
Wow, so no... Because often a lot of people who go into triathlon have done other things or like other sports. But you really just went from no riding and and all your training in rugby would have been pure speed training, no real endurance.
100%. Yeah, I'd never done any sort of endurance work. And even cycling, like the audacity on me, honestly. I got a bike and just went straight out on the highway. And I hadn't even ridden like a normal cruiser bike in like years. Like I just hadn't rode a bike since I was young as well. Like I just didn't ride. So I went straight on the highway on the TT bike. And I was at that point, that was a few months in because I didn't get a bike for a couple of months. And I was like, shit, like what have I got myself into?
I remember watching you early on and thinking you really need to get on that bike. And because you're still riding 180 kilometers on a road, like... irrespective of whether you can do it endurance wise, you still have to know how to ride.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it was. But that was part of what I liked about your journey, was that you were the audacity of it, to just like go, no, I'm just going to do it. And but I think more people should do that, honestly. I think we're also afraid of doing things that are outside of our comfort zone, just because people tell us that it's outside of our comfort zone, not because it's really impossible. It's just because people say it is. And you're a perfect example of why should it be.
Exactly. And I'm glad I can be that example because, and I always talk about this to my clients as well, but I feel like pushing your comfort zone is the best thing you can do. You know, like you learn so much about yourself and you always achieve so much more than you realize. When I look back in the past year, I definitely had a lot of audacity, but the hard work coupled with it, like it just pays off, you know, like if you put in the work, you're going to get the results. If you put in the work consistently, never give up, which I absolutely did. So it's really kind of cool to look back on. I didn't realize like how good I would feel throughout the whole Ironman. Like I thought it would be a real big struggle, but because of the training and just like me consistently showing up, I definitely achieved way more than I thought. That's for sure.
Yeah. I mean, it is one of those things that if you do the training, then you will, I mean, it doesn't mean you'll qualify for the World Championships, but it does mean that you will complete your goal. It really is that kind of sport where you just have to put one block on top of the other, and you will get there. So, so obviously the choice of triathlon was completely random, just watching a YouTube video, and that's how it happened. Had you thought of anything else before that, or?
Not really, to be honest. Like I was at that point, I was deep in a building phase for my next bikini comp, which was going to be last year. I just knew, like deep down, I just wasn't really in it. So I was kind of
feeling it. Yeah.
No, I wasn't feeling it. So I was actively kind of thinking about what's something else I could work towards, or I was thinking about like high rocks or something like that. Then I saw that video, and because of my self-life saving background as well, I was just keen to get back into more performance rather than just pure aesthetics. And I do love a good challenge, and I thought this is a large challenge, so why not?
So just so how does doing an Ironman compare to having to get up on stage in a bikini and be judged? How does that compare? Because it seems like a really, weird situation.
Yeah, absolute polar opposite. So for me, like I have nothing against competing. But again, like hindsight's a great thing. Looking back, it just definitely wasn't for me. It did not light me up. I guess like, you train, build your body to what judges are looking for, but it's super subjective, one might not like the look of you, and like that's just that. Whereas like with performance sports, it's just facts. Like you either...
And it's all in your hands,
Exactly. It's all in your hands to put in the work. So that's definitely the main, like the enjoyment compared to the two. I obviously much prefer Ironman. I love Ironman training and triathlon training. I still strength train. Absolutely. It will be a part of my life forever. I love it, but not purely just to go on stage. That chapter is well and truly closed. And it's funny because at the time, like I thought bikini preps were really hard, and they are in their own way. But compared to their training for an Ironman, it's just like, nothing compares.
Different world. Mentally probably more challenging in that judgment fact, and the fact that you don't really have any control over who likes what.
Exactly.
That would certainly do your head in. I can't imagine doing an Ironman having someone judge whether I'd done a good job of it or not, rather than just actually competing. It would be. I'm glad there's no judges, because I certainly wouldn't have got any points for style the first time I went through. That's throwing me completely off my line of thought. So basically, what I was going to say, actually, the strength training has probably held you in really good stead in terms of injuries and being able to keep performing, because certainly I find that all the strength training along with the swimming, running and riding is key. Like I see people who don't do it, and I just think, well, it's just a ticking time bomb waiting for something to go wrong, really, I think. So I think it'll certainly hold you in really good stead moving forward.
Yeah.
What's your favorite memory so far of triathlon? Like if you had to pick one, or a top three maybe.
top 3 memories.
Yeah, just like individual moments that you're...
It would have to be like crossing the line on the Ironman.
Yeah.
Like that feeling was just absolutely unmatched. It was just the best moment. But let's say another 2. I feel like, well, the triathlon I did in Mackay, like that was a cool moment because I was also like by myself and I was just like my own little hype person, and that was just like a cool feeling to look back on the past X months and realize like I'm about to do an Ironman, like do a triathlon now. It was a pretty cool feeling. But also like just the brick sessions, the amount of emotion I felt after each large brick session close to the Ironman, it was crazy. Like after, you know, like a 6 or so hour ride and then like an hour run off the bike, I would be done and just think, holy shit, like I just trained for like 7 hours. That's insane. And like I feel kind of good. Like those moments I'll never forget because I was just like shocking myself each time for sure.
And have you actually sat down and worked out? Because one of the things that I did, I mean, obviously I'm in a very different category to you when it comes to Ironman, but one of the things I did after my Ironman to try and give me some perspective, because because when you're doing the training all the time, I kind of lost perspective about what it really, like how, I was going to say elite, but I'm nowhere near elite. But in terms of the world population, what sort of percentile you are in just to be able to do those kind of brick sessions. And for me, I sat down and actually worked it out, and you're like in the top like 1% of athletically speaking, and you would be in like the top 0.1% or some stupid amount. But it was kind of really humbling for me to think, actually, you've just to be able to complete an Ironman means you're in this, like, I keep wanting to say elite, but it's not elite.
It is though, compared to
average people.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's pretty wild to think about. I haven't actually done the stats of it, but I have seen a couple of people post about it, like with females doing Ironmans and the stats on it, and it is quite mind blowing for sure.
Yeah, you're in a freakishly small group of people, and I don't think people quite appreciate that level that you've had to get to do that, because it's not normal. It's not, and I think people forget that sometimes.
Yeah, it's really not normal.
But in a good way, in the best kind of not normal way.
Absolutely, yeah, love it.
And the fact that because obviously you're the, well, I was going to say the end of your story, but it's not the end. The story so far is that you've actually now qualified to go to Kona next year.
Yeah.
So, because obviously I haven't interviewed anybody who's qualified to go to Kona yet. Yeah, so tell me about that feeling did you find out straight after the race, or how did it work?
Yeah, so, wow, it was just like so crazy. So it's funny because in my mind, like I wrote down actually with one of my goals, it was a couple of months before the Ironman, was to qualify for Kona, but I didn't know whether that would be that race or races after that. It was just one of my goals that I thought one day that'd be really cool to qualify for Kona. And I just did not think I didn't think I would win my age group for sure. And I didn't think the race would go as well as it did. Like I had a feeling that it would go well, but not as well as it did. Like I knew I would go well. I knew I'd be stoked with it because I put in the work and I felt that, but it just like exceeded expectations. So when I crossed the line, I didn't even know what time I got until it was like a couple of minutes later, and I was just talking to a few of the guys that just did it. And then I got told my time was like 11 hours 19. And in my mind, I was like, crap, that's that's great. I was kind of aiming for around 12 hours. And like, I thought that would be great, like 12 hours. But I really had no target because it was my first Ironman. I was just in it to have fun and do my best. And I was like, thinking that's amazing. And then I looked at the stats and it said I was first in my age group. And I was like, shit, that means I've qualified for Kona. And in that moment, I was just like, I was so overwhelmed with happiness because I felt so good. I just done an Ironman and I was so emotional, and I was just like basically bouncing off the walls with the amount of energy I had. I was just stoked and high on life. So yeah, that moment was crazy. I was beyond happy.
And have you actually thought ahead to what that looks like? So you're obviously planning to go.
Yeah.
Yeah. And is that your next Ironman, or are you planning to do something in between, or?
So I am going to do Port Mac next,
Yeah.
which is in like
That's
15
just,
weeks.
that's yes, okay, that's in April, is it? May?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'll do that one. So, yeah. So I had a chat with my coach because basically like you had to register the next day on the spot.
Yeah, they don't give you a lot of time to think about it, I swear. It's like you're doing it or not.
Yeah, I was thinking, oh my God, do I do this? Do I not? But I was like, I'm young, why not? Like, might as well go for it. So yeah, it secured my spot, and then I've had a couple of calls with my coach, and we've kind of gone over the plan. There was like two options, you know, like obviously this is still like my first year of triathlon. So there's an option of, we had a chat of, you know, just like go bucket list thing, like have fun and tick it off, or like give it your best red hot crack and, you know, do your best in it. And obviously I'm like, oh, I'm going to do my best. So
I was going to say, even I can answer that question. I've spoke to you for 20 minutes.
So it's like, okay, what's that look like? And, you know, ideally it'd be an Ironman before Kona. So I picked Port Mac, just like the timing of things, and that works out well. And then the next one will be Kona. So I've got some time between Port Mac and Kona, which is great. So I don't burn out. But yeah, that's the plan for the next few months. So it should be exciting.
Kona should suit you well, though, because you're used to the heat. So that won't be an issue for you, like a lot of people it is.
Yeah, that's one perk. I have heard, though, it's pretty gnarly heat, but we'll see what happens.
You can come up to Townsville and do some training just before you go, because it's like that all the time here. So
Yes, I really should.
But yeah, so I think it's amazing that you've qualified on the year that it's going to be in Kona, because there's a lot of talk around at the moment about, should it be in Kona, should it both be there, should they alternate, all that sort of stuff. But for me, the history of Kona and the whole, just to be able to go there, and yeah, I think it's an amazing opportunity, and I'm sure you will give it a red hot go. I can't see you doing anything less at this point. So, it's an amazing story all up, and hopefully everything goes well for you in training and there's no issues. And have you booked a hotel yet? Because I hear that it's pretty hard to.
I just booked a hotel like a week ago, and it is wildly expensive. Like that's one thing. Like this is not cheap, but anyway, money comes back.
Yeah, well, if you need some sponsorship help, reach out and I can
oh, thank you.
See if there's some people around who can help with that. But I'm sure that surely you must be getting sponsorship people talk to you by now with YouTube and all that sort of stuff.
We've got some options, but yeah, always eager to look out for the right people, because it does take a team, that's for sure.
Yeah, that's the thing with those kind of things. It's not just like, you can't just roll up like you did in Mackay to the event and just get it done, because, even an Ironman, as you found, it's not, it really can't do it by yourself. You need support, especially the first time. Like it's not that simple, logistically speaking.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
it is an individual thing, but it's really not. Like it takes a team.
Oh yeah, I wouldn't have finished mine if it hadn't have been for everybody there. Obviously I didn't do 11 hours, but just the support and that knowing that everybody's there, and I don't know, it's more of an event rather than I don't know. It's hard to describe.
Yeah, it's a huge difference for sure.
Yeah. So in terms of, we'll step aside from have you heard, because one of the reasons I started this channel was because the first time I went to Cairns to do an Ironman, everyone I ran into who was doing one had a story behind how they got here. And, I remember putting my wetsuit on, and one guy on one side, this is his first race and he's never done an Ironman before. And the guy on the other side this is his 15th Cairns Ironman, and he's like 70. And I just thought, and everyone I spoke to had some kind of story, and I just thought, how amazing. So what's the wildest story you've heard from people who you've spoken to when you've been doing your triathlon training or at the events?
It was actually interesting. When I was putting my nutrition on my bike, I was talking to a guy next to me because I was just making conversation. At that point, I was a bit nervous, and I was like, let's just make a conversation. And I don't want to butcher this, but I think he'd done like 17 Ironmans or something crazy. And he wasn't that old. Like he seemed around 40. And I was just thinking, oh my God, like 17 Ironmans, that's insane. And he said to me, he's like, they don't get easier, but the day goes really quick. So soak it in. And that was like the last little piece of advice I talked to someone on the morning before the Ironman. So that was pretty cool. And in my mind, I was just like, that takes a lot, like 17 Ironmans. That's huge.
Just think of the amount of training required to do that.
Yeah. So it's just like people are amazing. And that's the thing, like you surround yourself with people doing all these cool elite things and it just becomes like normal almost to be around people doing such things. So yeah, it's been pretty unreal to meet heaps of like-minded people. And there's been a few people as well that I've met or bumped into that, you know, come back from like injuries, like hip replacement things and doing an Ironman that year. I'm just like, that is insane. Like there's so many stories that just really inspire you.
Yeah. And I think for me, it just kind of, because I hadn't really thought about that side of like, why is everybody doing this? Like, and the many and varied reasons that was what was amazing to me. And everyone had found, because I knew what motivation it took for me to get there. Yeah. And there were thousands of other people there who had found that same level of motivation. So cool. And I just remember thinking at the time, if I could just bottle this up, I could sell this for a fortune because people would pay ridiculous amounts to feel like this, you know, and get the benefit of all the training and everything that you've had to do to get here. Unfortunately, you can't bottle it, but it would be, and I really, the hardest thing I think I find is conveying to people how it made me feel to be able to do it. Yeah. Because it's really hard to explain. People go, I've been for a run and I felt good after I exercised, and like they don't quite get the accomplishment feeling of doing it. And I think that's, I don't know, hopefully this series can convey that to people and help them to understand why, you know, because we are very different people, for example, but you obviously felt the same kind of amazement at finishing at the end as what I did, even though our stories are very different. Everyone gets that, and you see it in the faces of people as they cross the line like that. You know, some people just lose it completely and other people are just like jumping around like crazy. And hopefully we can capture more and more of that, because I think that's the real amazing part of the whole thing.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's a really cool concept because like you said, you know, everyone has their own why, everyone has different backgrounds, but you all have that same feeling of like, you know, completing an Ironman or a triathlon or, you know, all of the months of hard work and then it unfolding that day. It's really cool.
And I think it's one of the only things I can think of where the people who are finishing where I finished, like 15 plus hours, are, if not more excited, at least as excited as the people who are coming in first, because that's pretty rare.
Yeah, it's so cool. And it's funny because like when I was doing the Ironman and on the run, I was just like amazed at even the supporters on the sidelines. Like, oh yeah, they would be out there the whole day and they're cheering you on, like calling out your name from, you know, your bib number and stuff. And I'm just like, wow, like us doing it, like going past people in the Ironman, like that's next level support. Like, you know, you egg each other on and stuff, but the supporters on the sideline as well, who obviously have people doing the Ironman and have seen the training, like that was also so cool. I was like, wow, people are so selfless to just stand here and cheer everyone on.
It's an epic experience all around, really. And I haven't had any of the bad experience. I mean, I haven't had a terrible injury or a bike breakdown, and I know that those things do happen, and I've seen the, you know, what happens afterwards part, but it is a truly, I personally, I would recommend anyone to give it a try because I think it's an amazing thing. But speaking of what other people think, when you came up with this idea to do an Ironman, I'm assuming the response from your family was the same as mine. They smiled at you and said, yeah, that sounds nice. I'm like, assuming that it was just a crazy thought.
Like it's not going to actually happen.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah, it was funny. So when I was sitting on it to myself for a while, I didn't really tell anyone I had this idea of an Ironman. And then I was getting really excited because I was just thinking about it. I started listening to podcasts this is still like, I didn't even start running yet. I was just like invested in like what this looks like. And I texted mum. I was in the gym and I text mum saying something like, I'm going to do an Ironman, or like I'm going to train for a triathlon and do an Ironman next year and become an Ironman. And she was like, oh my God, you hate running. Can you clear me? Because she was like, she knows who I am. And then she's thinking, Jazz isn't messing around here. Like, she will do an Ironman, but does she know what this actually is? So I called her and I was in the gym and she's like, yeah, it's a really long way. Like, she searched up the distances and I was like, yeah, I know, I've been thinking about it the past couple of weeks. And that was kind of like conversation done. And then the few months later when I actually got a coach and I was like, yeah, no, I'm doing it. I think that, like, credit to, like, I fully understand, but people probably did get a little bit worried because they're thinking that's a lot of training and like, is this realistic? It's 10 months. Are you going to do half before it? But no, my family were fully supportive and everyone around me, all my loved ones were fully supportive. I feel like they were just worried, if anything.
Well, it's not like they're, you know, some people like your uncle might have done it, or like if there's some knowledge in the family, then I think it would be less scary. But when no one knows what that really means, it's because it's not even like, oh, I'm going to run a marathon. Like, well, you can just walk a marathon if you don't actually manage to run it. But this is a whole other thing. And I can understand, like you said, why they would be a bit freaked out initially. But it's great that they were, I mean, and to be honest, I don't know how you would do it without a supportive family. Because
honestly,
it takes a lot. It takes a lot.
It really does change a lot. And it was funny because the first few months, I feel like, again, like they were just a bit worried about, because they know who I am. So I'm like, if I set my mind to something, I would do anything to get there and make sure that goal happens. And then, you know, they were talking to a couple of people, and then other people have their own opinions of like, it's not going to happen. It's unrealistic, you know, like, so then they were freaked out about that. And, you know, there was a little bit of that, which again, like I fully understand. And some people did have their opinions that, you know, they have their own opinions, and that's okay. But no, at the end of the day, I had nothing but support with my close loved ones, which honestly, it's all you need.
Yeah. And you can't listen to all the fluff around you in those situations, because everyone's going to have an opinion, and none of them are really important. So in general, one of the questions I like to ask is if you've got any life advice that you'd like to hand out, or it can be triathlon specific, but it doesn't need to be.
I feel like you could take this advice kind of like in any way, but it's just like, never give up on yourself. And I know it sounds cliche and we all kind of say it, but push your comfort zone, never give up on yourself, because you just don't realize how capable you are unless you need to have a crack to realize how capable you are. And I know that takes courage, that takes sometimes pushing through like limiting beliefs and things, but at the end of the day, you know, life's short. It goes by pretty damn quick. And, you know, if you don't push yourself and push your comfort zone and do what somewhere in you feels, you know, called to do, then it's just like you go by and it's a robot mode. And in my opinion, I feel like that's a way to kind of feel disappointed at the end of time. So I feel like my advice is just to go for it. Whatever lights you up, whoever you want to be, go for gold. Never give up on yourself and have fun in the process of whatever you're working towards, because that's also a big component that will change the game for just the journey itself.
Very well said. One of the things that I always go back to is that, especially on that point of us not really knowing what we're capable of. I remember listening to the David Goggins audiobook, and him talking, and whilst some of the stuff he does is ridiculous and no one should try that, the bit where he talks about how he estimates that most of us think that when we're at maximum, we're actually really only using about 40% of our capability. And I think the Ironman journey for me really showed me that there's no, you know, even though I was overweight and horribly unfit, and you really got so much more that you can tap into, that it's just, people are just afraid to tap into that other part because you have to go beyond the point where you thought you could ever go. Yeah,
exactly. Very well said.
And we're not, I don't know, there needs to be a lot more people that talk about that, I think, because it's not as scary as what people imagine. Like, it's actually, you know, and the reward from it is much more than what you can ever imagine. So I think it would be, that's why I think Ironman's such a powerful tool, because even though it's scary as hell and we all think we're going to fail when we do it, even, you know, because having talked to Brody, and because you and Brody are obviously much younger and fitter and you're in a much better place to start, but you're still shitting yourselves at the starting the process thinking that you can't do it. And so that's a message for everybody that, you know, you can be fit and young and healthy and it's still going to scare you, but that's the point.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, and I was one of the people I watch a lot, his favorite saying is, if you set your goals and they don't scare you, then you need to go back to the drawing board and set some new goals.
I love that. I think it's so true.
Yeah, it always makes me think about, because often you'll get comfortable and then you'll set comfortable goals.
Yes.
And they're not really goals then. That's just like a to-do list.
Yes.
So,
yeah.
Now, one of the key pieces of this is, if you were going to give advice to someone who's right back at the start of your journey, what would you say to them? You know, obviously, yes, do it, but what advice would you have right back at the start?
I mean, like, first things first, definitely get a coach. Like, that's just a given. Yeah. It'll definitely help you a lot. But I feel like in thinking about me at the very beginning, let's say like this time last year, or not even, February last year, if I could say something to the very beginning of my journey with triathlon, and I did it, to be honest, but I feel like it would just be to never give up and never also compare yourself. It's really easy on social media to kind of like look and people are doing all of these, you know, crazy paces or crazy times. And when you're new to triathlon or just training for performance in general, you know, like your paces might be a bit, quote unquote, slower. I know it's all context dependent, but you might look at someone else and then look at your pace and think, oh my God, like I'm never going to get there. And then that can really like eat you up and get in your mind a little bit. And that did happen to me sometimes at the start, especially with running. I was like, why am I not quicker? But you just have to embrace the beginning stage. I feel like the beginning stage is super cool because you see yourself progress. And again, like if you don't give up and you keep putting one foot forward, you will progress, and just come back to why you're doing it, the journey you're on, and just like stay in your lane with your training as well and have fun with it. Like I said before, if I could say anything to anyone starting, just have fun with it because it's a process. And if you don't enjoy it, then like, what's the point? And you're not really going to reap rewards from it if you dread it. And it's not to say that there's obviously really hard sessions, because there is. Just find the enjoyment, because that's what makes it, in my opinion.
What do they say? Embrace the suck.
Embrace the suck. That's it.
Yeah, you've got to. And funnily enough, like, I don't think I did a good job of that right at the start, but now I can really get into, like, especially on a trainer, on my bike trainer inside, like I can really embrace the suck some days. Not every day, but some days you're like, okay, I'm ready for this. And you know, just like bring the pain on, and I know it's coming, and let's do it.
Let's go.
Yeah, because I think that's something that you learn about yourself as you go along, is that you can do something that you know is going to suck. It's going to be painful and hard, and you can just get in and do it without having to analyze it and think about it. Just,
yeah, exactly.
You know, and that's one of the things I have to say about having a great coach is that I look at my week ahead and I just go, okay, and then I just go, and I don't have to think about it. I know there's going to be pain, and I know there's going to be sweat, and that's okay. I just go and do it. And I think that was one of the mistakes I made at the start, was that I thought that I could do it without a coach initially. I realized a couple of months into the process that was just never going to happen, thankfully. But it is definitely one of the main pieces of advice I give people as well, is get some kind of coaching. Whether it's just a plan that someone's drawn up that you buy, or whether you get individual coaching, I think you can't, especially if you've never done this stuff before. I mean, God, I wouldn't have had a clue as to what to do. So
exactly, yeah.
And the last piece, obviously you've got Kona next year that you're going to be training heavily for. You're going to keep that on YouTube and share that journey with everybody?
Yes, I will be. I've taken a month, or a bit over a month now, off the YouTube. As you would know, it's been a big few months, so I was like, okay, I'll just have a little bit of a break and just give myself some space. But I'm looking forward to picking the camera back up again, which is a nice feeling. So yeah, I'll document the journey to Port Mac, but of course that's in preparation for Kona anyway. So yeah, I'll definitely log the journey.
And have you thought past Kona at all? Like in terms of,
Haven't.
no, just
I haven't really, because Kona's in October. So,
it's almost a year. So
yeah. So once that's done, I don't know. I'm not sure. I'm excited to see how it all goes and how it all pans out. But I feel like it won't be the end because I just love it. And I don't think I would just stop all of a sudden. So I know it won't actually. Let me reframe that. So who knows? Who knows where I'll end up? But yeah, we'll see what happens.
excellent. Anything else you want to share before we finish up?
I think we've covered a lot, but yeah, I would say, like I said before, just whatever you're working towards, go for gold. Never give up on yourself and just see where it takes you because life's precious, and you've got to go for these things to make the most of it.
And you only get one crack at it.
Exactly.
Well, thank you very much for your time, and hopefully this channel goes well enough so that we can catch up again after Kona, because it would be amazing to share that, and hopefully you can get some help with the videoing and everything while you're over there, and be able to really share that journey. Because I've seen other people. Obviously, when you're competing, it's hard to do all of that stuff as well as, it's like, it's not the front of mind that you want the camera out all the time, but I'm sure there'll be lots of people who'll be very excited to see how it all goes.
Yes, I'm excited. Thank you for having me.
No worries.
Thanks so much for watching, and make sure you give us a thumbs up, subscribe, and click the notifications to see more great stories like this one. And reach out to us in the comments or via email in the details below if you have a story you would like to share.